Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
First, a word from our sponsor. The Daily Compliance News for May 11, 2023, the Who Is They edition. In a special offer, I'm giving away a Compliance Podcast Network shirt for anyone who can guess which movie that line came from. And our first story today is from the Financial Times. Who is the $279 million whistleblower? Robin Wigglesworth apparently is very worried about this and wrote a very interesting article. Robin believes that the whistleblower was the one who turned in at least one, but perhaps even more, of the companies who got into trouble for using WhatsApp and part of the $2 billion September fines around ephemeral messaging. So interesting deduction. Perhaps it's right, perhaps it's wrong. Nevertheless, we still don't know who is the whistleblower. Our next who question involves an article from Reuters. In his defense against the FCPA allegations, indicted FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried has accused the law firms, or rather his law firm, Sullivan Cromwell, as acting as the prosecutor in the government's case against him. Now, they were the company's lawyers, so they weren't his, but he argued that Manhattan federal prosecutors effectively deputized FTX's outside counsel to build a prosecuting case without triggering the government's obligation to turn over evidence. That is becoming an increasingly important issue in federal court, and this seems like as good a case as any to take it up. Next up, from Bloomberg. Not only is rampant corruption choking South Africa, it's not only leading to the lights being turned off, but literally workers are pulling the plugs on power plants so that their contractors will get the contracts to fix them. So we now have sabotage as corruption to get business from Eskom. You just have to understand how corrupt Eskom and South Africa is. It's really bad. And our final story, unfortunately, comes to us from the great state of Texas, where an Army veteran who was convicted of murdering a Black Lives protester in Austin and was sentenced to 25 years. The fascinating thing about all this is after the conviction, but before the sentencing, the governor of Texas said, "I'm going to pardon him," because he was in fear for his life. Why? Well, because there were protesters out there carrying guns, which is legal in the state of Texas. My. And the answer to the question from the movie is They Is They. I hope you can guess which movie that's from. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.